to order. Noel, if you read the roll, we'll get started.
Tim Slocum.
Here.
Don Walsh.
Here.
David Borwe.
Present.
Peter Talbot.
Here.
David Belber.
Here.
Jim Jenks.
Here.
Sandy Pavano.
Here.
John Mylone.
Here.
And Sylvia Nichols. A quorum is present.
Thank you for that, Noel. Please rise for the pledge if you're able. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America.
and to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. I am happy to turn this over to you, David.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. And with that, let's not waste time. Go right into Sean for some opening remarks. We'll do Park and Rec first this evening, if that's all right, so that we don't have to keep John so long with the other ones.
And Sheila.
All right. So I'll, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Tonight we will be, as Dave just said, going from Parks and Recreation, which includes community pool, and then we'll touch briefly on their 5-year capital plan, which only has about 4 or 5 items on it, but we do want to touch on a couple of those. And then we'll transition over to Public Works, which includes the water pollution control division and budget, and also, of course, grounds and public property and other items. So a lot of ground to cover. If we're not able to get to the DPW capital items within the time we have allotted, we can take some of those up at a budget review time. But for now, we'll just get started and see how much ground we can cover. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to John Golick, and I know he'll have a brief presentation, and then we'll go through the lines. Once we're ready to follow along on the lines, we'll pull that up, and we'll be on page 165 for Park and Recreation in the horizontal book. So I'll turn it to you, John, if you want to take it away.
Thanks, Sean. Good evening, everyone. With me tonight is also Elizabeth, who's trying to get on. Sean, I don't know if she had some sort of an invalid meeting ID code came up, if maybe you could try to get her to get on. And then also Sheila Adams with the pool.
Yep.
So I did put together a budget presentation that Sean does have a copy of. If you don't mind indulging me, I'd like to go over and just put some highlights together on the year, and then highlights through our budget where there were some changes. So there you go. Thank you. So this last fiscal year was extremely busy for us. You're all aware of the Bartlett South project design, engineering, final design, public bid, and where we are today. Hopefully we're going to be at a point where we'll be able to do a groundbreaking in April of this year, next month. The Mixville Park John G. Martin Outdoor Educational Building Project, which commenced last September, is just about, I would say, 90% done. We're working on getting the certificate of occupancy checklist culminated with Public Works coordinating plumbing with FH Hitchcock next month, probably next week. And again, with this project, I'm anticipating a ribbon ceremony and a building plaque unveiling, which it's already installed sometime in May once we finish the building and do the necessary site work. This summer I conducted, as I have the last 4 summers, the annual park facility audit with HD Seeger. We inspect all the park amenities and the pool to identify risk exposures, and then compile a list of work orders to Public Works as needed or necessary. The Bartlett Beach Summer Concert Series was another success, including the sponsorship program, which is in year 2 for me, which we grossed $15,500. That eclipses the previous year by $500. And we've already started this year, and we're off and running. And Richard Chevrolet will be the presenting sponsor for the 3rd year in a row. Park and Rec participated in the Cheshire Sustainability Fair in October. Community pool, the next couple of items. The front exterior doors and the front staff entrance doors were replaced with new doors, long overdue projects. The community pool surveillance 4-camera system was installed this fall. Also this fall, NEEC completed the task of full conversion of the mechanical room to a KMB backnet system. The air handling unit had a couple of motor failures. They were replaced this fall. The community pool diving boards, as Sheila has them annually serviced, it confirmed that they needed to be replaced. And because of the timeline and ordering, we did this back, I believe, and Sheila could correct me, either January, February, and they're due to come in, I think, this spring sometime. Cheshire Park pickleball court lights were installed in November. All of our special events, the turkey scavenger hunt, the annual tree lighting at Bartlett was expanded, drew a great crowd. The Nights Lights and Sights house decorating and the Santa hotline were all a good success. Another project that we're involved in is the Mixville Park Operational Master Plan led by Weston and Sampson's John Tunsky. We kicked it off in October. We had a project orientation, multiple park site visits, monthly meetings with the goal of improving vehicular control and capacity as we have issues there, passive and active recreational usage, signage, natural resource asset management of the pond, beach area, and the woodlands. The final meeting actually is slated for tomorrow, with a final plan available sometime in April. The James A. Nankin Recreation Person of the Year for 2022 is Haley Falk, and she's pictured there down there with Jim's wife and Chairman Pat Duffy. Another project that we're going to be embarking on, that we've already started, is we're going to be transitioning away from our current management software, RecTrack, and we'll be migrating to myrec.com. That includes the pool, that includes Arts Place, and now it may include also youth and social services as they need or they're looking for a programming administrative solution to some of the issues that they've been having or experiencing. I'm excited about it. My staff is excited about it. You could read the paragraph. I'm not going to read verbatim, but it'll be very, very robust. And the biggest piece for me is the customizable web page that will provide real-time updates, the ability to text, email alerts, announcements for all the things that we're involved in. And then lastly, for a highlight, we just rounded up and finished the another 2-year bid for the ice cream mobile vendor. It's a slight decrease from the previous 2 years of $6,100, but nonetheless came in at $5,500 for this year and for next year. So with that, we'll turn to the next page on revenue, and I will turn it over to Elizabeth Main. Elizabeth.
I'm actually pretty excited about this, and I hope that you guys are as well. Things are going great in the recreation department. We are having a lot of participants. We're already seeing some of our tennis lessons are full right now for the summer. I mean, it's still cold out. We had snow this morning. So we're actually looking to increase and see if we can bring on extra staff so that we can accommodate more residents, so that we can meet all the demand that we're seeing. So that's really exciting. So for comparison, you can see at this time last year, we had about $132,000 in revenue. We have $235,000 right now in revenue. So that's huge. And it's a testament to the hard work that everybody's putting in the office. The fact that we have a full staff now, we have a full-time program coordinator on board. We have that new administrative assistant. It's really given us the opportunity to shift some things around so that we can focus on adding new opportunities for the residents. So I think we're actually going to exceed what we were forecast to bring in revenue in this year. And so I think that it's quite feasible that we're going to bring in $300,000, which is what we input for the budget. Is there a chance we could exceed it? I think it's possible, but I don't want to get too excited. We do have a change. We started our registrations for summer camps 2 weeks later last year, and a lot of them filled. So we are finding that a lot of people are registering even faster this year for our summer programs. So we're still looking to bring in more program, facility, pass, and concession revenue. As John mentioned, that's primarily the ice cream truck vendor. And then if we have any food trucks for any special events, that would go into there as well. So we're looking still to bring in more summer camp. We've got our Muck Run special event coming up. Our school gym use, that gets billed after the gym is used. So that's all wrapping up. This past weekend was pretty much our last weekend of outside groups using the schools through our building supervisors. So we're going to be collecting about $13,000 there. And it really only just barely covers the cost of the staff who's actually in the facility. So that's something we're going to be looking to change in the future, is what the amount is that's charged for school gym use through our department. We also will be bringing in the Mixville passes. That's going to launch next month with the season passes. Most of that revenue will come in this fiscal year, and also the pavilion rentals. So for 2024, we've got that projected at about $325,000, because we're going to be increasing some of our fees. Minimum wage is increasing, and it will be increasing again. So we keep increasing the fees to cover our costs, because we want that to be directly related to the programs. And then we also kind of took into consideration that as part of this Mixville master plan, there may be a change in the amount of rentals in the Mixville pavilion. So those are just some of the highlights for next fiscal year. But I think that things will continue to trend onward and upward. We're doing great things, and I think that the revenue is reflecting that. I think that's pretty much all I wanted to touch on there. Administration, we added that administrative assistant position. I think I already touched on most of that. One increase that you may have noticed is our seasonal brochure price is increasing. It's due to two things. One is prices for everything is going up. So the price, even if we had produced the exact same product, is going up. But we've also had to add pages so that we can include all of the offerings that we're providing. One place that we had asked for an increase that hasn't been forwarded on, that we're going to have to potentially get creative on, is the program materials line. That was a bigger number because we need furniture in the John G. Martin Foundation Outdoor Education Center that's just being finished right now. Our youth basketball program, we were looking at making some changes there, and we had taken into account that it was going to cost more by projecting that we were going to charge more to the participants to get better uniforms and new basketballs. So it's going to be a little bit of a challenge if we don't actually have the money to spend there. If you look at this picture, it's from several weeks ago, but this is the inside of the building. And that's pretty much what we have, minus the wires down at the bottom, because we don't have any tables and chairs or shelving units or anything in there yet. So that will be something that we're going to have to figure out so that we can launch that for summer. I think next we have the recreation. And in recreation, our biggest expense is our people, and we can't exist without our people. That is, they run our programs, and due to their creativity, we are able to keep our program supplies pretty low, actually, because they get creative with what they're using. And we use a lot of things found in nature, and we recycle things from year to year. So for some comparison for where we were, the last time that we ran a full slate of programs, kind of like we're doing now, but it was less programs, but it was the most programs we've run in several years. We had an expense of about $206,000 that year, and minimum wage was significantly less. It was only $10.10 an hour at that time. So right now we're looking at this budget of having a minimum wage of $15 an hour and we're also looking at a potential increase on January 1, 2024. And we don't know what that minimum wage price will be. It's not going to be announced by the state until October 15th of this year. So that's another interesting consideration. They're going to be indexing the minimum wage going forward. That was part of the bill that passed in, I believe it is the 2019 legislative session. And our part-time line, it says it's program summer help, so it is programs, but it talks about over 100 part-time employees. And those are retired folks, they're high school kids, they're college kids, they're your neighbors probably. So we provide a lot of employment, and it's a great training opportunity for our young staff. It's a great opportunity to get their first job. So it's over 100 people in town who are working for the Parks and Rec department. And some of them are from out of town, but the majority are Cheshire residents, because who wants to pay for gas these days to commute to a job that you're making minimum wage? And that's the breakdown there of what everybody is. So it's our summer camps, our basketball staff, our building supervisors in the schools, building supervisors at the youth center, our Mixville Rangers and supervisors, tennis staff, and then we have other staff throughout the year who's teaching fitness programs, volleyball, field hockey. Let's see, just all of our program instructors come out of this line as well, and that's year round. And then on to our celebrations. There's not much to say except people are smiling out there. They're loving the celebrations. The enhancements to the tree lighting were wonderful. We've got a couple pictures there. And so this is just a brief snapshot of some of the activities that we've had this year. And if anybody's available over April break, we'd love to see you. We've got our fishing derby in the evening at 5:30 on Tuesday, April 11th. The Mixville Muck Run will be Wednesday morning, April 12th at 10:30 is when check-in begins. And then Touch a Truck, we've got a lot of local businesses who already signed up, as well as various town departments who are going to be supporting us by showing off their trucks there. And that'll be at Bartland Park from 10 to noon on Thursday, April 13th. Back to John.
Yeah, then in conclusion, this past spring, the good folks over at Public Works ended up reestablishing the field at Chapman School and did some work over at the Darcy Field. Both CYS and CYB have registrations that have been trending through the roof. So there's the dire need right now to have those fields be game condition, game ready. And that allows us to better utilize some of the other fields, because we could break up the rookie ball, the T-ball, the single A ball, double A ball, and put them on those smaller fields and leave the larger fields for, the other kids of the various ages of the softball and the baseball. So we need to make sure that, Public Works has the resources to maintain those two areas plus Highland. And then I've spoken to Sean at other times that Highland still has the ability to put a smaller field in the back where there used to be 2-ball fields. And it's kind of nice because one could be a regulation size and one is that smaller version size that accommodates the rookie ball, T-ball type of activity. We're still short multi-use fields. We're going to get through. We'll limp through this spring. It's going to be great. It's going to be fantastic when the Bartlam South Field comes online with the lights and afford us all kinds of scheduling flexibility. It'll be fun to see how that all lays out, because then what should happen is that there'll be turf time and then there'll be natural turf time over at Bartlam, so that we can get rugby out of the north end or the south end of Mixville, off of Mixville Road in the open field, and get them some time on a regular field. I do want to thank and praise the Public Works Department for their support for all of our grounds and event needs. The parks, in my estimation, are in really good shape, and that's through the combined coordination and the efforts of both of our departments. I do want to thank Chairman Doc Duffy and the entire Rec Commission for their efforts representing the public, overseeing the operation of this department. I'm grateful for the team that we now have assembled, as Elizabeth alluded to. We're pretty much at full strength right now, with the addition of Sarah and Krista Massey. And let's not forget the good work that Elizabeth does, Stephanie and Barb Costello. And then finally, thank you to Chairman Slocum and the entire council for your support and confidence in us, and Town Manager Kimball for your oversight and guidance on a day-to-day basis. So with that, we'll complete that and open up to any questions that you may have.
All right. Do members have questions? Council members have questions? I see Peter's hand up. As a liaison, you're probably really ready.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. John, thank you. Sheila and Elizabeth, thank you. John, please pass our thanks along to the rest of the staff as well. Not lost on us in what is an incredibly tough budget year is the fact that nearly 272,000 in savings is coming from the non-salary line primarily because of the pool subsidy. So you're covering just about any increase with the exception of some salary stuff that is out there. So thank you. Great job in a tough year. Sean, my only comment, I think, or question would be, it looks like the 1.2 million for 23 anticipated for revenue. And we had budgeted 1.029 million. So it looks like we're going to be a couple $100,000 over. Not to put more pressure on John and staff, but is that something we could look to bump up for 24? I got it, Sean, off of the vertical
Are you
book
talking about pool
33.
revenue? Are you on pool revenue, Peter, or on department revenue?
No, this was it's not going to show up, but it's the vertical book 33,
Okay,
which is the
Yeah, the special
financial
funds.
sources and uses. Under financial uses, I'm looking at leisure service.
yeah, so that chart, and I know Jim Jascott's on here, right? That is that will be combined, including the pool. So if you're looking for the department revenues, Peter, I just want to make sure we're on the same page. Department revenues for the Parks and Rec department would be over on page 113, and then the pool specific revenues will be separate. Again, Jim, correct me if I'm pointing them in the wrong direction, but
No, you're absolutely right. I'm trying to find Peter's number on page 33.
yeah, he's on 33 with the combined sources of financial sources of uses by category, but I think that rolls them up together. So I
Yes,
think
it
it's a little
does.
cleaner to look at 113 for
Okay.
that 300,000 or 325 that Elizabeth referenced.
Yeah,
You'll see that as department revenue. And then separately, that's what I'm thumbing through. I think we haven't really talked about pool just yet, but that is, as Peter said, and as I highlighted in my my initial introduction to the budget, that is really a success story this year that I think is worth talking about. So it is a good segue. But Jim, do you have where's the
Yeah,
what
it
page
looks
is
like,
pool revenue?
Sean, you had bumped up the revenue over
Yep.
the anticipated for this year. So it is bumped up for the 24 budget. So that's good. I mean, we don't want to, make them a victim of their own success either.
Yeah, exactly. If you go to page 128, though, yeah, the 128 is the community pool revenue report, and you will see that is bumped up over 23, over 22.
Yep.
Again, I think what's confusing on that report, again, just for everyone's memory, is that when you see 215, 299 as the general fund subsidy coming into the fund, that's the savings that we're enjoying on the general fund side
Right.
of the ledgers. So obviously pool fees is what drives all of their core revenue, but those going up is what's allowing us, net of any operational increases, to enjoy that savings on the general fund side. And put another way, if that 215 ever came down to zero, it would be completely covering all of its own costs, if that makes sense. Does that answer your question, Peter? I hope I'm not.
It
dancing around
does.
there.
Yep, absolutely, Sean. Thank you.
Yeah, sure.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. And that is good news. That's one of the very bright spots in the whole town budget, is that the pool is really becoming closer and closer to self-funding. And it never really was expected to be self-funding. But this is great news.
And if I could, sorry to just not to belabor that, but if we are on page 128, it's important to note it's a combination of factors, but it's also been consistent over a couple of years. If you look at the bottom, kind of to the right there of that page, you'll see the year-ending fund balances historically. And because we've had 2 or 3 solid, successful years, we've built up that fund balance, and we're relying on some of it here. Just to be very clear, we're using that, and that's where we're enjoying the offset. But that still remains 100,000 in fund balance, far more than we've really ever had, as you'll see there, since before 2015. And I think it's still a healthy amount. Obviously, the fund is supported by the pool if needed as a backstop, but we were comfortable. Jim and I were comfortable as we were trying to come up with a budget number, targeting that 100,000. If we exceed in revenue, then there'll be more in this fund balance at the end of next year. So sorry to just be back on that.
No, but that raises a question though, and that's using significantly more, almost 300,000 more than the year before, because it was a negative 87 the year before. Is that more or less a one-shot revenue that now the 189 needs to be made up again next year?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's going to be that's what we're going to have to watch closely. I
Okay.
mean, and that's why I think it is worth, focusing on. We're trying to balance it. We didn't want to use all of it for that same reason. But again, and you can hear Sheila speak to it, we have more revenue opportunities if we want to. We wanted to offer, I mean, the one of the major items requested recently, I don't want to put words in Sheila's mouth, but certainly it's the pool lessons, the swim lessons, potentially with adding staff or adding some of those lessons on the weekends, which again, we've been hesitant to. We're trying to balance, as we always are with the pool. It has competitive components, it has community open swim components, and then it has this kind of safety and life safety swim lesson component. Again, I'll let Sheila speak to it, but the demand for really all three are off the charts. And we as the deciding bodies, collectively here, we have to decide, where do we want to focus, and some are more revenue generating than others. So I don't know if Sheila, maybe this is a good time for you to kind of give us a recap of how the pool's going and how things are going forward.
Sure.
Mhm.
I mean, as you can see, the pool we're doing great. I mean, there's just nothing else to say. I think last year at this time, we were at about $370,000. I think now we're over 470, probably closer to $480,000 in revenue that we have in. What do I attribute it to? I attribute it to, they say it takes 3 to 5 years to build a business. This pool is a business. Yes, we are a public service but we are a business. And we have had good years, and then bubble came down. And then we started having good years, bubble came down. Then we started having good years, COVID hit. So we are now in a point where we have been going for 5 years of just consistency. We're here all the time. We haven't been having closures, knock on wood. Everything is just falling into line. And as Sean said, our swim lessons right now I am booked solid for swim lessons through summer. Almost all of our lessons are full through the summer, because we started registration on March 7th for that. I'm sorry, March 20th. And we had literally a lot, people waiting in the parking lot at 5:30 in the morning on March 20th to come in and sign up for swim lessons. We had a line out the door to the parking lot. It is, I attribute it to that I have a great staff. I have great swim instructors. People want to come here. Their kids learn how to swim here, is really what it comes down to. I think I can pat myself on the back for that. I've trained all the swimming instructors, I guess. It is just, we have people coming every day. We're getting new members in here. Our memberships are through the roof. We're just having a great year. A great year.
Good to see the positives of COVID, which is getting outside and doing more outdoor
Well,
activities.
that's what it is. And I think that's what it is. People spent 2 years not doing anything, and now everybody's coming out and doing everything. We had an underwater Easter egg hunt last weekend. We had 150 kids show up to it. We did Scuba Santa. We had 130 kids show up for that. It's just things that we are doing. People are coming in. Weekends, we're really busy with people coming in. We are booked for birthday parties, 4 each day on the weekend. So 8 birthday parties on the weekend. Right now, we are booked for birthday parties through the end of June. It is just, people are coming in. Like I said, I have a great staff. They make people feel welcome. People feel safe. They enjoy the programs that we're running.
Sheila, maybe it's the palm trees on the deck.
It is the palm trees on the deck. The ambiance is better. Now people want a tiki bar, so I don't know if we're gonna. So
I have a question.
Tim? Sure.
Yes.
Yeah, please.
Thank you, David. Well, first of all, Elizabeth, Sheila, John, kudos to all of you and your staff. We do recognize the efforts, and we certainly observe all the use all around town of our parks facilities and recreation facilities. So thank you for that. My question goes specifically to, naturally, there's great excitement around the expansion of Bartlett South. That's going to be a wonderful endeavor. Does your budget reflect its impacts, its construction impacts and program impacts? Because we know there's going to be some pressures on the fields. We know there's going to be some events that don't take place, and I'm not sure how your budget in the past has been impacted like this, but I'm thinking of the community fair. Maybe that's mostly the police department that's impacted by that event budget-wise. But does your budget reflect some of the cost and savings impact of that are going to take place during construction? Does it recognize that, or are we just sort of going with what we know?
No, there's really not a lot of elimination of money related impact. It's, I had my field meeting a couple of weeks ago. We have or last month, and I just let go the master schedule, and soccer's been good about opening up some time at Quinnipiac. Most of the leagues are kind of finding ways to make things happen with the elimination of the softball field, hence the Chapman, Darcy, and the Highland field reconstructions. Lacrosse is making do with time across the street and doubling up. Softball's kind of been doubling up. Everyone's actually been very, very cooperative. We're still running the concerts. We're still going to be doing Fall Fest.
So basically, it's all things are pretty much great. It's just a matter of watching the construction from afar, dealing with it with use of some other facilities. And anything else you wanted to add there, Sean, to the?
Oh, I would just, sorry to jump in there, but I think the only thing that John and I have talked about, and it's relatively minor, is John's been very clear with folks looking to rent the pavilion there by the playground, that if they're looking to rent it in the summer, they need to know that the field, and there will be construction fencing up on the other side of the driveway there. And so making sure they're aware of that. We had a kickoff meeting with the contractor just earlier this week where we talked about, dust control measures and things like that, just to make sure that we keep the entire area as safe and usable for all activities. But, I think really, other than the pavilion rentals, as John said, and maybe a handful of tournaments that wouldn't have those fields accessible, from a revenue standpoint, there's not a lot of difference for us. And actually, when we get to the grounds budget, we have part of the reason we've been able to, and we will be able to maintain some of these additional school fields, is in that construction season, one of the Bartlett maintainer won't need to be maintaining a large portion of Bartlett. And so we will be able to flex a little bit to some of the school facilities. So other than that, it shouldn't have a huge operational impact.
Fantastic. Thank you.
All right. Don?
Thank you, John and Sheila. I'd like to see the parentheses around numbers in this list. That's a big plus for me. I just had a couple of questions and mistakes that I want to just run by. I know that summer help, that includes the Rangers that we have at Mixville, correct? And how you're going to have the same amount that you had last year, same timing and everything, or are you increasing any of the times that they will be there?
We were actually looking at increasing the time slightly and adding another supervisor. That was a benefit, but the supervisor was only there limited hours on the weekends. We felt that there really needs to be a supervisory role there all the time. As some of you may be aware, unsupervised staff sometimes takes advantage of the situation. So we want to make sure that there's a more responsible person there who is the supervisor that they're reporting to, and that supervisor is on site all the time, because I can't do that. I can't be there 7 days a week, all the hours that the park is open. So we're looking to have another supervisor position added there so that we have more coverage.
But I assume that it gets more use in the summer on the weekends, if it's a nice weekend. And I always feel those are the times, and I get, you also need them during the weekend, and, the parents are bringing their young kids there too, but I know when it's more crowded, I think it's a more important time to have rangers and more, there's more chances of something happening there. And I saw, the increase, I know you mentioned because of minimum wage and everything, 56,000 or something increase. Does that include any additional people, or is it just straight because of minimum wage?
Yep.
Besides the supervisor investment?
Yeah, it is some of the actual expense realized last year because it was hard to fill all of the hours at Mixville, and we're looking at potentially starting a little bit earlier on some of the weekends. So some of the actual hours that we experienced having staff there, sometimes there was only one person there. So we don't want that to happen again this year. So that was an increase. So it was some increase in hours, but it was primarily adding that supervisor there. Let me pull up. And also another expense where because we were full all summer last year for Mixville Adventure Camp, we actually added 2 counselors so that we can accommodate 20 more kids every week there. So there were 2 counselors at Mixville Adventure Camp, and we've also been adding some of our fitness programs. So there will be some instructors there.
And have you increased the cost of the camps to offset some of these costs?
Yes, absolutely. So that's some of the reason that you're seeing an increase in revenue. Is because the fee for a camp is going up. So the fee went up to accommodate the minimum wage increase. The anticipated revenue increase is because the 20 more kids are going to cover the cost of those 2 staff.
But, and I know I brought this up last year, and I'll probably bring it up again this year, about potential of putting cameras at all of our parks, but especially that one. And I know there's an issue with Wi-Fi, but with GoNet Speed and Frontier moving through the towns with their high speed cables. I'm wondering if that's something maybe perhaps we could look into getting a grant for or something like that, because it could often help when there isn't a supervisor there, somebody looking at what's going on at these places, especially where they're swimming or sledding or camps or anything else. I would like to have somebody looking to see if there's a possibility of a grant or something like that. And finally, just I know with the Bartlett Park being probably a year away from being completed, I assume next year, will you be planning to increase more recreational things with the new park, or it will be pretty much status quo? Not that I wanted to move towards next year, but I'm just wondering if that's something that we will be seeing in the future, that there will be more recreational things going on because of the addition of the new park.
Certainly there could be on the Great Lawn with the stage and that passive space, does create opportunities. I'd like to see how, once we accommodate all of our own Cheshire-based organizations on the turf field and the natural turf field before, we start running midnight flag football or, some other types of activities where we could realize some revenue possibilities on the turf field. But I think the biggest thing is to make sure that, we accommodate lacrosse in the spring, football and cheerleading in the fall, and see where things lie in the middle in the summer and go from there.
The only thing I would add, if I could, sorry, just to jump on that, is just to manage expectations for the public too. It is an 18-month construction window. There will be components of it. It's entirely possible that the turf field elements or some portions are done earlier. There will be a question as to whether they're accessible or not, because they're still within an active construction zone. So we got to remember that. But the other important piece with the Great Lawn that I'm trying to just remind people is we really need to make sure that even though it's irrigated, we really need to make sure that that grass takes and is allowed to establish before we're putting any heavy use on it. So I have, we've been communicating with the chamber that, we are accommodating Fall Festival on the north side of the park this year, and we should also plan to do so in the same location next year. It is entirely possible that there's a great lawn there and there's a pavilion and it's looking great, but to have that kind of heavy use could destroy and we do really have to rebuild or resod that grass. So depending on when they lay the seed and sod or whatever, just to manage expectations, some of it we'll just need to treat a little more carefully until it's really taken root. And but it is an 18-month construction window, but parts will be done.
So we're about 2 years away from ever really using that for any recreational use.
Yeah, I mean, I think for the Fall Festival, for instance, it should be more than ready. It's just for in fall of 25, it should have well established. But if they get ahead of schedule, anything's possible. We're just trying to manage expectations.
The field portion should be ready the spring of 24.
Right.
Okay, is it turf field?
Correct.
Okay, all right. Okay, well, thank you. And again, thank you for, I think the recreation department has done an outstanding job in this town. I think people with the pickleball course and new park cutting and what you've done at Barton and things. And to the basketball courts, I hear good things and people really enjoy what you're doing. On the budget that we're given and we appreciate it. So thank you.
All right, I don't see other hands. Any other questions or comments regarding Park and Rec? All right, well, thank you so much. Oh, sorry, Mr. Oliver.
Oh, go ahead, Dave.
Oh, you're on mute. You're on mute, David.
There we go. Sorry about that. The mouse wasn't working to click the unmute button. Sorry. So this goes back to the pool real quick. I know it sounds great and it's really remarkable how the improvements we've seen in terms of revenue and usage, and Sheila and everyone else is doing a great job getting that back up and running. I guess my question is, and Sean alluded to this, is that we may have to make some choices as to eventually we're going to get to a point where maybe we have to choose certain things over others. I guess, what is the capacity of the pool? I mean, how close are we to really utilize, getting to a point where we get to a point where we've used up, there's only so many time slots, there's only so much usage that could go on. And I guess the question is, what do we see as that the end game of that, and how far out are we from being sort of maxing out on the utilization of the pool?
Our capacity is 480 people can be in the building at a time. The only time we have that many people in here is during a swim meet. We have not gotten to that point with having people in here recreationally swimming. As far as capacity on when we can add different things right now between right now, swim lessons are going on, swim team is in here, diving is going on, and recreational swim is going on. We have everything going on at the same time. Our lessons are full to the point where we can only fit so many kids in the pool, in certain areas of the pool, to be able to do swim lessons to make them effective and for people to enjoy them and see that their kids are actually progressing. Can we add more times to swim lessons? Then we are going to break into, we have a lot of people that come in, they want to do recreational swimming. We're shutting down the leisure pool and part of the shallow end. We do that for 3 hours every night, and we do it on Saturday mornings for 2.5 hours. Doing it any more than that, then people start getting really angry. In the summertime, we close it down in the morning and we close it down in the evening. We get a lot of people that are upset that we do it, but we do have to run the swim lessons also. I know John's alluded, he's asked me a number of times to do swim lessons on Sundays. Sundays have always been family day in here. I don't want to get to the point where we're shutting down parts of the pool on Sundays, because it's a big day for families coming in here. And I don't want to take that away from the families that are coming in here. Are we at the capacity for swim lessons right now? Yes, we are. There's only so many instructors that I can put in the water. If I could get 10 instructors, I could get 10 instructors 3 hours worth of swim lessons, but there's not the room in the pool to have 10 instructors in there.
And that's what I was curious. Eventually,
Yes.
you're going to hit the point where you
Yes.
can't no matter how many
Correct.
people you have, there's just not capacity to put those people in the pool.
Correct. And as far as swim lessons, we're kind of there right now with what we're doing with our programs. As far as swim team, I mean, that's something totally separate from us. Recreational swimming and our lap swimmers, we're not there and we're not anywhere as near there yet to be able to say, okay, hang on a minute. We can't fit any more people in here. We have to start a wait list for memberships and stuff like that.
Okay. I'm just trying to gauge at some point, I mean, the revenue's going up and everything's going great, but at some point in time, we're going to hit a ceiling of the possible revenue because we can't have
Oh,
any
absolutely.
more
Without a doubt.
programs. Okay.
Without a doubt. We are going to get to that point.
And I'm just wondering how close we might be as we look at this increase. Are we talking that there's some amount that we can still go? I mean,
Yes.
but it's not endless. We can't get to a point where this thing doubles in revenue and that type of thing. So,
Correct.
Well,
Okay.
the only exception to that is, I mean, we do control the fees that we're charging, right? So you can
Right.
increase the fees. And we have, for instance, this last year or January 1st, I think, John, the fees increased for the YMCA's use of the pool. And
Correct. The
we've had
YMCA
some
use
other-
swim meets in the high school and all that stuff. Yes, that increased.
Right. So we've been increasing, but again, it ultimately it's a council decision too, if you'd like to see us go more in that direction. But again, it's a balance with something like swim lessons. We all get it. We want to make sure they're as affordable as possible so as many people do it as possible. But that as we are saying, we're running a business. If you're trying to look for a few more dollars, there's always opportunities to adjust any of our fees across all of our departments.
okay.
Well,
Thank you.
on that, Sheila, I'm sorry, Dave.
No, I was just saying, no, I appreciate that. I'm just trying to get a feel for, and as Sean, you alluded to, I mean, there's a balance there of what also, we could at some point in time say, sorry, there's no more free pool usage, no more lap time, because we're just going to squeeze more stuff into it. And then we balance the usage of townspeople versus the groups and stuff. So, right, we'll have to make that decision. I'm just trying to get a feel for, as we're growing, where are we in the growth pattern? So,
I mean, right now you come in here at, 6:00 in the morning, we've got 18 lanes running and they're all full. And it's that way periodically throughout the day. In the evening, they only have 5 lanes available to them because the swim team is in here. We've got 2 and 3 people swimming in a lap lane when they're in here. So, I mean, yes, we are growing, but I think we've still got room to grow.
okay, thank you.
Yeah.
And John,
Sheila-
you're
yeah,
going to
go
say
ahead.
something, John. Go
Yeah,
ahead.
Sheila, did you want to mention the seasonal pass, the change up that you want to introduce?
Okay, so as you know, we have seasonal passes that we sell. And we've had the seasonal passes since we were an outdoor facility in the summers. The summer season goes from Memorial Day weekend through Labor Day. The indoor season or the winter season goes from the day after Labor Day until the Friday before Memorial Day weekend. The indoor season is 8 months, summer season is 4 months. They're the exact same price. Is that fair? No. So what I want to look at, we have a number of people that'll come in and they'll say, I want to come in, I want to swim from September to December, and then I leave, and then I'm going to come back in April, and I want to swim from April till June, and then I do my outdoor pool. What I would like to do to go to is selling yearly passes and monthly passes, so that people can come in and they can buy as many months as they want to do. So if somebody comes in and they say, okay, I'm going to be here from September to December, okay, you buy that many months pass. When you come back in April, you buy the number of months that you want at that point in time. It's not going to change the fee, the amount that we're charging. I just want to break it down and let people buy monthly passes, which we do have a lot of people that want to do that.
So that's sort of a customer accommodation as
Right.
much, really, because that sounds like goodwill more than revenue adjustment.
Correct. Correct.
I think I like that idea.
Yeah, I do too. Good. All right, thank you.
All right.
Other questions or comments for Park and Rec? Or what did we have for capital items? You said there were just a couple of them there, if I remember.
Yeah, there's on page 234. We have just 2 we really want to highlight. One is a potential move up into the first year, or at least a discussion point related to the skate park, kind of in coordination with the Bartlett South project. So page 234 in the capital book. And again, I'll let John walk through them, but you'll see starting out with the first item, which has really been a source of a lot of conversation that John and I have had. This is, for folks familiar, there's the old tennis courts that are really completely in disrepair at this point over off South Rolling Acres behind Dodd. A variety of proposals for that. There's been some interest in pickleball. Personally, I'm a little worried about pickleball with respect to the noise that it can generate so close to the houses there. But we have to have a conversation about what do we want to do with that facility. Folks from Dodd have reached out. They'd love to see that as an outdoor basketball court. Either way, because there's no decision made yet as to what direction we want to go, I moved that out a year from where it was first requested, just to give us time to figure out what do we want to do with it. So, again, in the future, looking for feedback, we don't have to probably belabor it tonight, but just know we're continuing to look at options for that older and disrepaired tennis court. And then John, do you want to talk about the skate park proposal?
Yeah,
that
so
you added?
the Bartlum Skate Park has come up a couple of times now and the HD Seeger, annual park audit. The park itself it's in its 20th year. We went through a couple years ago and we did some warranty repairs on the ramps and added those galvanized steel rails that you could see through 2 years ago. But the cracking, the fracturing is just getting, too much. And, Public Works recently, a couple weeks ago, went through and patched while we had some really good weather. As the weather turns again, next week, possibly they'll do the same thing to those other ones. It's kind of like a stopgap until, Rich Pruitt's offered a few suggestions of what they've done repairs on the linear trail with a contractor where they saw cut and replace, and that temporarily will buy us some time. Working with Gary, Mark, and Rich, we had a meeting with HD Seeger again to see if we should close the court to get a recommendation. And that would be difficult, so that's why Public Works went in very quickly and made some patches and repairs temporarily. Gary also, when he was in Newington, he was part of a project at Clemla Park, and I think Sean can maybe throw that up. I ended up getting a quote from Hinding Tennis for the surface of ours now, and it would just be a post-tension surface utilizing the same steel ramps. And the quote that's in the capital budget is $148,000 just for a post-tension surface and putting back the steel ramps that are 20 years old. What you're looking at now on your screen is a full concrete park that was done in 2018 for $100,000. So Gary had invited Mr. Jeff Poprocki from Mystic, who has done probably about 20 different skate parks in Connecticut, all different types of designs, and he works with the teenagers or some adults that are still, riding the board and doing their tricks to kind of get a feel, to kind of kick off his design juices and do one that's unique to Bartlum. And he had said that probably for under 200,000, we could do something that resembles the one or like Clemla Mary. But we're just waiting on that quote. Gary, I don't know if you've gotten it. I know you're off the mic right now, but we were supposed to get that within a month, and it's almost a month's time. So that's what we're thinking about Bartlum Park. So I'd rather do something like that than just put back 20-year-old steel ramps on a post-tension surface.
So at this point, that one, you'll see that's in year 2 at the post-tension base proposal, but as John's explaining, kind of different from what's proposed here, and we don't have a quote yet. If there was interest from the council to move that project up, we could talk about it. We don't have to decide that now or really in the next few weeks, but it could also live in year 2. But I think as a key component, as you kind of enter Bartlum, once Bartlum South is done and that south side looks, will look fantastic. It'll be nice to have that skate park kind of updated or repaired in some kind of permanent fashion, but happy to answer any questions.
I mean, at some point, the base is just going to start cracking more, and you're going to be left with a park that's going to be closed and not used.
Right.
All right, Dave Felber.
Just a quick question. So I know this is going to sound stupid, but when you say post-tension concrete, what exactly? What is that? Just what makes something post-tension concrete? And then also with the example you used, obviously it has stuff built into it for people to grind on and jump on and that type of thing. But right now we've got bigger ramps, like actually physical structures kind of inside that part. So are all that what we have now going away, and that would just be whatever is in the concrete, or would we be supplementing the concrete, the new that newer concrete, the project that we're waiting on the bid for, with existing structures if they're still in good shape? I must admit my knowledge of skateboarding is very low. So
Well, when we talked to Mr. Paprocki, he gave us a couple of different scenarios about, as you referenced, some of those ramps are higher. There might be some excavation going down low if it's possible. If I don't know if there's any, Gary, when we were talking about, I can't remember if there were utilities that passed through there. I don't think they did, but we talked about, you know, the various heights and achieving, you know, some of the elements that are existing there now as a steel ramp could be made into, you know, the part of the concrete contour.
Yeah, right, John. Just getting back, I don't have a quote yet, but like you mentioned, the number of maybe about 200,000. The quote, what we're presenting in the budget book is 148. Just the balance would come from Public Works contributing to do some of the demolition, some of the rough grading, providing some of the aggregates. About the utilities that you just mentioned, John, that we'll have to have that marked out, but we don't believe there's any utilities out there, but we know there are some utilities just south of the park. The exact location we'll have to, you know, work out. But yeah, that would be great if we're able to do some grading there and you know, really scape it, you know, for the like they did at Glen Lemire.
Hey, Gary, can you just give Dave a quick layman's term of what post-tension concrete is?
Sure, I'll do my best. Maybe John might be able to pipe in here too, but where you install cables in the concrete and you stress the cables to induce loads and stresses in the concrete. That's as far as I'm going to go. It's just not plain reinforced concrete, but it adds. What should I say, John? Am I close here, John?
Yeah, a lot more strength.
I don't want to get too much into the engineering detail, but it's just not plain reinforced concrete. It's really an art and a skill to it.
all right, because I mean, and thank you, because that's obviously helpful to know the difference. And so it makes the concrete ultimately potentially last longer and is stronger and less likely to crack at some point in shorter period of time, correct?
Right. And Dave, the tennis courts at the high school are post-tension concrete.
Okay.
And those we don't, as opposed to just asphalt on grade, right? And so our basketball courts at our parks are asphalt on grade, and they won't last quite as long. You could do post-tension; it's a more expensive effort, and it will last longer. But that just to compare,
Maybe
those
not
tennis
worth it.
courts at the high school are probably our best example of post-tension concrete.
Okay. And the reason I just asked about the steel thing is that in my mind, I'm envisioning what's there now at the skate park. And then I looked at the video you showed, and it seemed like there's not, for what it's worth, doesn't seem as exciting, or there doesn't seem to be as much big ramps to go on the, you know, if you don't add some of that stuff back in. But maybe I'm wrong, and obviously depends on how they build it, right? So we'll wait and see what that comes out to be.
All right.
Moving along,
Other questions?
I'm
Yeah.
sorry.
No, yeah, other questions regarding the skate park before we move on to other items. Okay.
So the only other year one project, John, if you just want to touch on, are the pool projects, really. Which
Yeah.
right to.
So Sheila and I, we had a meeting and we dove through if you recall, going back 2 or 3 years ago, we had Weston and Sampson Aquatic Division go through the pool mechanical side and then the pool equipment side. They put together a list and an inventory of all different types of equipment and things, and gave us sort of a plan that we could, you know, try to capital plan and make the necessary improvements. So we did, Sheila met with the mechanical people that she uses to service the pool. She met with Connecticut Custom Aquatics on the pool end that she uses to service the pool, sat down with the Weston and Sampson information, and kind of came up with a little bit of a plan. So the first one in year one, which is a little bit overdue, is some of the deck repairs and the epoxy floor. Sheila, if you want to add anything to that.
I mean, the deck is to the point where, I mean, the concrete slabs are starting to heave a little bit, and there's gaps and there's a the deck needs to be repaired. It's in really bad shape.
Is that what we took money from to do another project?
Correct. So
A couple
it
years
it
ago?
had been
Okay.
approved, and then we had to do the liner, so we took the money from that
Right.
and put the new
To do
liner
the
in.
liner, because
Yeah.
while the pool wasn't being used, that kind of made
Yes.
sense.
Yes,
But now it's come back to say, hey, this
Yes.
didn't go away.
And then if you look at the request sheet, we've come up with the pool is gonna need new sand and the laterals for the main pool sand filters. We're likely, according to the recommendation, 1 to 2 years out. And Sheila's price for that was about $40,000. The kiddie pool needs some rehabilitation. That's likely 1 to 2 years out at 75,000. The heat exchanger replacement is 3 to 5 years out. Today's price, 25,000. The chemtrol replacement, that reads the chlorine pH levels is about 3 to 5 years out. And then at some point, we'd like to replace the pool deck picnic tables with something of a more synthetic material that could, withstand the conditions inside the pool, so that we're not, scraping, painting, replacing boards that are warped and all that other stuff.
Yeah, so the only thing I would add is just, this is really in response, and I think the council had great feedback over the last few years that we need more of a active capital plan for the pool. We didn't want any surprise capital projects popping up. So a lot of these items that John had, yes, they're a little smaller, but they sum up to capital items that we can request in future years. But we want to keep those on the radar, so there aren't any surprises, and we can budget accordingly.
Sheila, anything else that we need to put there?
Oh, Don, you have a question first before we.
Yeah, thank you. Just, just to back up what Sean just said, I know, I mean, we were all kind of surprised when we had to replace the liner a couple of years back. And going along the liner, is that something that's inspected on a yearly basis? Because I believe, what was it, we have a 10-year warranty or a 20-year warranty on it? And I'm just curious to see, I know maintenance of it has to happen on a regular basis, but how often is it being checked? And
I mean, the biggest thing, the only way to really check it is we have to drain the pool. Okay, and that is, we have to make that decision as when do we want to do that? And it is something that we probably need to do within the next year or two, drain the pool, because you're supposed to change the water over every few years anyways. And I actually was speaking to the gentleman from Connecticut Custom Aquatics that was part of the install of the liner. And the guy is going to be around in Connecticut in the summer. And I've asked him if he can have the guy stop here and just take a look at things and see how things are. But to really get a good look at it, you need to drain the pool.
and how often should we be doing that? Do they give you a timetable? Only because, I know eventually we're gonna need to replace it again sometime, but
Correct.
is it a 10-year, 15-year, 20-year warranty? Is that, how long is that?
I think it was a 10-year warranty, if I recall
Yeah.
correctly. And really, the life expectancy of it, we should probably, like I said, we're at 3 years that it's been in because we put it in 2020. We should probably drain the pool, like I said, within the next year or two and really take a good look at it.
Yeah, I would strongly suggest that, only just because if there's any repairs needed, we should take advantage of the warranty that we have on it.
Correct.
Do that.
Correct.
So, all right, and the tables you said are gonna need replacement. So are they wood tables?
They're
that we
wood
have?
picnic tables that are in there, and they just, they sit in water on the pool deck and everything else. The legs rot. I mean, it's just,
Why would put
we
wood
had the wood
tables in?
picnic tables because we were outdoors, so they were
Yeah.
out, and
I know, I get it, I just,
Yeah.
it makes no sense, but it makes sense to get something that would withstand, that would last a lot longer, it just makes no sense. How we put wood
Correct.
in there. But thank you.
correct.
All right. Other questions or comments? John Malone?
Yes, very quickly. I don't know if it's a priority or what we're going to do, but I'm curious if we're looking at the Lock 12 Pavilion, any plans for it at all? Or are we just going to let it get worse or eventually take it down?
Good question. Gary and I talked about it today at our weekly, or our month, not our weekly, but our monthly DPW Park Rec meeting. I know that Dan Bombero is working with Jan Rojas, an architect, to kind of come up with a plan of action for that. And I don't know where they are with that, with their plan and cost estimates, but I know that that's being looked at right now.
All right, I don't see it in this year's budget, but I'd like to see whatever we're planning to do with it, at least somewhere here in the 5-year plan. John, and if we're gonna take it down, that's fine. Let's just plan to take it down. I mean, that's whatever decision's made, let's make a decision and not just let it get worse. And then I've mentioned a couple of times, and maybe it's not important, maybe people don't agree, about improving the lights at the basketball court at the youth center. I don't see that in here. Is that something we're not gonna do? Or
No, so we actually have, I know GC Electric's actually coming out there. Is it tomorrow, John? I think they're gonna go look at
They're coming Friday afternoon.
tomorrow afternoon. So they're coming tomorrow afternoon to give a reduced, or to give an idea of what we can do cheaper than the original quote that we received. So the first quote we received was about $20,000 from Musco, I think, to do similar lights, the same quality probably lights as the tennis courts right next door when this was first raised. But no, it's absolutely on our radar. I think it would fall far under a capital requirement. We would be able to accommodate that. We can get something for 10,000 or less that just simply replaces the heads with higher quality lights. We'll just accommodate that in this year's operating budget.
And we're looking to go to like a push button activation that we did with Musco at Cheshire Park for the pickleball lights for the basketball, and then see what they could do as far as a retrofit to the lights for the tennis courts. So those aren't on during rainstorms or, inclement weather and so forth.
No, I appreciate that. There's seldom I stop there and I don't see someone on that court. So it just, I'm glad we're able to do something. Thanks.
Yeah, you should see something in the next few months, ideally, if we can get something replaced up there that's just higher quality, that we should have something pretty soon.
Thank you very much.
But yes, David Bellberg, please.
Sorry,
And then
seem
Jim.
to be full of questions today. Just a quick question, John. You mentioned the kiddie pool in the pool there area there. Right now, it's still broken, right? I mean, there used to be a mushroom there. The mushroom's broken, and it's very expensive to fix, right? I
Correct.
guess
So,
the question is what is it? Are we budgeting? When you're what is it your plan for the kiddie pool? I mean, what is, and I do know that, I guess with some hope, maybe we're all crossing our fingers, God forbid the Bartlam Park South project maybe comes under budget, and the possibility of maybe having a splash pad and maybe tying it into the kiddie pool. Look, we can all hope and wish and dream. And so I guess my question is, what is in your vision, what is the plan for the kiddie pool? What are you looking at doing as part of this capital improvement?
Okay, so the biggest thing is we want to get the mushroom's going to be taken out and eliminated from the structure. The pool, the joints in the pool, it's 20 plus years old, are leaking. So we are losing a lot of water still now through the seams. Dean patches them when we find them, and then it holds for a while. It is just in such desperate need of repair. We could have somebody come in and paint it. It would have to be sandblasted, new joints put in, all of that stuff. That would be a lot more expensive than what I put in for the budget. What we want to do is do a liner like there is in the main pool in the kiddie pool. That's the ultimate thing that we want to do.
Right. With no water feature. It's just going to be
Correct.
a small lined
Correct.
pool.
Correct.
Okay.
And
is
just
there
remember, David, and if I could just, and obviously everyone knows I'm a big splash pad fan. And
that's what we're
proposal-
counting on, Sean. We're counting on that.
I know.
Yeah.
You and me both. But in the kiddie pool, that item's in year 2 of the capital plan, that extra money. So we do have some time to see both how Bartlam South goes and if any other grants or funding materializes. I have to say, you'd be surprised. From time to time, we get calls in this office from folks asking about splash pads. Some combination of especially with the ADA enhancements that make it accessible to everybody, the ability for people to be able to get into kind of a zero entry water feature is very attractive. But we know, as we talked about with the council 1.5 years ago, they are expensive. And but if we don't want to waste money on the kiddie pool if there's a better option and if we can identify funding. So I think just stay tuned and keep splash pads on your mind, and maybe we can come up with a great solution here in the future.
Thank you.
3 years ago, David, when we had the study done at the pool, Sean did we hired a consultant to take a look at a splash pad for that area, and that number was north of 600,000 almost 2.5 years ago.
They're expensive.
All right, other questions for Park and Rec, capital or operating? Oh, Jim, I'm sorry. Yes, Jim. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, David. Just the last several years has been challenging for you guys, obviously. So it's nice to hear so much good news coming from Park and Rec. I mean, you guys have always done a good job and have done a lot with what you have. So thank you so much for everything that you guys have accomplished in the last several years. Quick question I have has to do with the Rolling Acres project. So there is, it sounds like there's some competing interests there as far as pickleball and tennis and basketball. Obviously, we have with all these people doing swim lessons and the kids in the t-ball leagues. Obviously, we have more kids coming through. There's kind of as we see with the schools, there's kind of a bubble of kids coming through town. So how are we going to decide what is the best use of that Rolling Acres property? As far as, I mean, you could see that perhaps another basketball court makes sense. You could see that more pickleball courts make sense, and the tennis courts seem to get good use too. So how are you guys planning on deciding what's going to be the best use of that little piece of property there?
I was hoping the council would provide some guidance. I know, talking to Michael on the athletic director there, for their curriculum, PE curriculum, they would like to see a basketball court, at least one, be put there, because they used to have one down at the lower section, and now that's the discus shot put area at Lower Dodd. So they'd like to see at least a basketball court go in there. And then, they do pickleball in their PE curriculum inside. They had mentioned that, and it used to be 3 large tennis courts. So there is some nice space there. The challenge is that it's an unsigned park. There's a little bit of I think a water course that may go through there, or there's some wetlands there, and really only parking for 12 vehicles. So, we've kicked it around with the commission to kind of come up with a couple of different variations. And because we have a lot of tennis and pickleball is popular, and kind of talking with Dodd and considering that, that's how we came up with this latest design of 2 pickleball and a full basketball court. But that's subject to change, or if we needed to go back to the table and come up with something, I'm fine with that.
So you feel with the current tennis courts, we have plenty of tennis courts?
I believe so.
Yeah. Okay. It actually just had another idea or thought. It had to do with, you mentioned maybe needing some space for the smaller kids in terms of t-ball, or is there a level below t-ball for baseball?
No.
Or no? Okay. There is still a small field behind Humiston. I don't know if that's ever been considered as a possible t-ball location or something, but.
Park and Rec already uses it for a program. Elizabeth could talk to that.
Oh, you do? Okay, good.
Yeah, we've had some therapeutic programs, and we've used it for some toddler programs. It's kind of more of a lawn than a great field right now. So we just set it up with cones and kind of use it for whatever we need. So we had therapeutic soccer there a few times, and then we ran a soccer tots program and a baseball tots program there in the fall. So we do use it some. It's just not, it would require a lot of work to make it a field that was used for more than what we're using it now, I think.
Yeah. That's good to hear it's being used. It looked like it wasn't really being used for anything, but that's good. Thank you,
All
guys.
right. Thank you. Tim, did you have?
Yeah, it was really just to sort of double back on what Jim had asked, because I think when John was sort of answering the question, it seemed to me probably the best potential use of that 2 areas is potentially for Dodd. And since they're the closest user, maybe that's where the emphasis should go. And then in connection with that, and this is just an open question, because Obviously, we're building a couple of schools on properties that have not been fully developed. Nor are they overfunded for all kinds of different fields and stuff. But we may be creating the potential for some additional sites on these properties, or at least potentially they could exist. So it's almost like you almost can't get too far ahead of yourself, cheering one spot over the other when knowing there's going to be some potential for some good where there is going to be better parking and some of the other elements. I'd rather almost see some of those things unfold than something maybe prematurely being developed and improved. Just a thought without even a promise to be made. Just a longer view.
Yeah.
All right. Other questions or comments? Oh, Don, and then.
Yeah, I
we'll
just
wrap
have
up
one
Park and Rec.
comment. Been bringing up Rolling Acres. Yeah, I have to say, number one, you're not expecting to like that area.
No.
Okay. But number two, I have to agree with Sean about the pickleball. We have to be cautious about this. And that is really in a residential neighborhood. It happens to be in my district, not far from where I live. And pickleball is a loud sport with those balls going back and forth. So I would be very cautious about that, especially with the neighbors around there. Yes, they bought houses in that area, but it was just a tennis court that really was seldom used. So I agree with our chairman about maybe focusing on using it more for dog recreation use. Dog has always had a shortage of fields and things like that, so that it may become a better use there. Or a quiet sport like boxing. That's really, because I know in that area there's a lot of people who are concerned about what will happen, because they know that those sports are on the radar, and they're just concerned about what may happen there. So, and I will fight against the law in that area. So, thank you.
All right. Interesting. Okay. Important that we heard that. All right. Let's wrap up Park and Rec then. Thank you, John, Sheila, Elizabeth. Thank you so much for your hard work. And clearly you touch an awful lot of people in our community with your services, and they seem very happy with it. And that's great. So we hope we can, and we know we'll continue to support them. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. Sean.
All right. Yeah, sure. So I'll just very quickly, I know we're maybe a little longer on rec than I anticipated, but that's a great thing. It was a good conversation. So we will next go to Public Works. We may not be able to get to all their capital items. I have a hunch given the hour, but I will take your lead, Mr. Chairman, how you'd like to go. But we have Gary Furstenberg. It's his first time through as our Public Works Director. He is joined, I can see there, by Dave Milano from our WPCA. Our water treatment plant. So they will be presenting their sections of the budget. The Public Works Department starts on page 115 in the horizontal book. Gary will be going relatively quickly through a number of slides here, but bear with a kind of an overview of the department and all that they cover. And again, this is important. It is our largest overall operating portion of the budget. So I'll let Gary take it away. And Gary, we can see your screen. So when you're ready, I would just start the presentation.
Very good. Thank you, Sean. Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, just,
good evening.
Confirming that I've got the right screen shared here. Is a little rusty on the Zoom here, but we're good to go. I'll be presenting the Public Works operating capital budget. We'll be covering Public Works, public properties, and the Water Pollution Control Authority. I'm going to try to run through these slides very fast. There it's advancing. I'm sure most of you are aware of what we do. Our mission statement really is to we develop, maintain, and improve town infrastructure, consisting of our transportation network, our park system, our buildings, our water treatment plant, and our large fleet of vehicles. The results of all that good work should be a safe and efficient transportation system that fosters our economic development in the community. Our park system supports the way of life that we live and what makes Cheshire a really unique place. Our buildings support the role of public government. Our water pollution control system protects our public health, and the solid waste and disposal recycling work that we do protects our quality of life. When I first started here, I first tried to get my hands around, what are all of our assets. This slide I will run through in some detail, but others I will not. But in summary, we've got about 120 miles of sewer pipe throughout town, 10 pump stations, 1 treatment plant, 1 levee, 180 vehicles of various types and equipment, 108 miles of sidewalks and pavers, 152 miles of roads, 7 bridges, 15 culverts, 3 rivers, 5 brooks, a number of tributaries, 27 buildings consisting of about 200,000 square feet, 5 large parks, 5 small parks, about 30 sports fields, 7.5 miles of linear trail, about 1,500 acres of open space and urban forest, and last but not least, 3 municipal dams. All right, moving on. I tried to quantify what these assets are worth. So just want to lump together all of the water pollution control assets. Not gonna get into all the details here, but it comes out to about a $500 million asset. So just keep that in mind as we go forward when we talk about the WPCA budget. Our buildings come out to about a $60 million asset when you tally up everything that we have in vertical construction throughout town. Our park system asset estimated at roughly about $100 million is what that asset's worth. You can see on the left all the various parts that go into that, the diamond fields, the rectangular fields. I did include the future artificial turf field that should be coming online later this year. And then our transportation network, consisting of the roads, bridges, street lights, and so on, is about $400 million. So just keep that in mind as we go forward. We talk about the public works budget. In total and aggregate, when you add up all the value of our assets, it's just over $1 billion of assets the public works maintains. On the far right-hand side of the slide, this is the percent column that's demonstrating what we spend on that asset as a percent of the value of the asset. So Water Pollution Control Authority is about a $500 million asset. We're spending about $5 million on that asset, or about 1%. For buildings, we're spending about 3%. The park system about 1%, and the transportation system about 1.5%. So as we go forward, again, just think about what you get for 1% of your property and what you can do for 1% or maybe 3% of your property. Those are the numbers that we're talking about for operating and maintaining all these assets. Just getting into the staff that we have about 43.5%, 43.5 staff that maintain this $1 billion of assets that we own. The bulk of those staff are in the maintainers, operators, and superintendents. That's about 30 people in those top 4 categories that make up the 44. In a organizational chart, this is what it looks like. I'm not going to get into all the details and so on, but I'm sure you've seen this org chart before. Going forward, we're proposing to add 0.75 staff in the WPCA. That's 10 hours for a mechanic and half a part-time support staff. So we're proposing to go up to 44.33 staff. And what that looks like in the lower right-hand corner, you can see the electrician / mechanic position and the support staff position down there. So very little change. In summary, we're looking to replace staff that are retiring, looking to fill our vacant positions, and in the WPCA, we're looking to add skill sets so we can be more efficient at what we do. That's adding it's a mechanic / it's a combination mechanic electrician position. We already have the electrician, so it's just expanding the duties of that role and adding 10 hours. And then adding about 20 hours for the secretary position. that's a position that we had out there for decades in the past. Right now, over COVID, something happened and we don't have the person, but right now we're sending staff from town hall out to the WPC a couple days a week to help support that position. Just very disruptive to what we do in town hall. And that secretary position would help with purchase orders, monthly reporting that we do, help out with bidding work, payroll, and so on. Those regular duties that we do out there. This is the WPCA staffing, but staffing, I think this is on page 125, if I'm not mistaken here. 132. Yes, 132. This is what's proposed in your book in black. The red annotations are what, as we started talking through, different ways that we can, work this thing out and really add skill sets, plan for succession. Right now, about 4 of our guys are ready to retire. In fact, one has submitted his notification for retirement. So we only have like 9 guys, 9 people out there. If 4 of them retire, that's half our staff. We want to plan for succession, and that's what this plan allows us to do. It takes the electrician position and combines that with the mechanic position, and we add an operator and training position where somebody who's young in their career that wants to get into the wastewater profession, it's a place for them to start. Moving on, the budget overview. The numbers in black, those are directly from the budget book. When Dave and I looked at the numbers and we saw a minus 1.6% in the water pollution control budget, we just looked at ourselves and said, that's not possible because all of our costs are going up. And we looked into the numbers. We're all numbers people here. Numbers tell stories. And the story behind that number is, if you look in gray, there is a $295,000 one-time budget transfer. I confirmed that with Jim Jaskett. So that would lower the current fiscal year. Without that one-time transfer, it lowers the current appropriation by $295,000. It really results in a 5% increase is really what's happening. Just that one-time transfer doesn't really represent what's happening, year in and year out. So that's why I wanted to be upfront and present that discrepancy. It's just that's what the numbers show, but there's more to the numbers than what the numbers show.
And we did that on purpose. I mean, that was purposeful for a reason to give that extra money as it was needed at the time.
Yeah, that's correct, Dave. That's right. That the council made that additional appropriation, and so right, year over year, because it shows as the appropriation in the year. Gary's trying to show that it looks like a decrease, but obviously absent that underlying, there is an increase to the budget.
Good point. Thank you.
Sorry, didn't mean to break your train there of thought.
It's sort of like a sprint, Dave.
Yeah. All right, Gary. Good.
Let's see here. Where am I here? Just presenting overall big numbers here. When you look at what we're proposing, and really I'm just focusing on the big percentages here. 43% is in highway, sidewalks, and drainage, as you'd expect. Another 34% is in the solid waste and recycling. Total 77%. That's where the big money sits. Moving on. Just looking at how our staff are spread across the different disciplines that we have here. Just really focusing on the top 4 lines, where we have a $500 million asset that's maintained by 7 people at the Water Pollution Control Authority. Essentially, one person maintains $70 million of assets. In buildings, we got 2 staff. That's each person maintains $30 million of assets, or 100,000 square feet of space. You can sort of relate 100,000 square foot of space. That's like a Home Depot, but it's not. That's a warehouse. If it's really office space, like we maintain, that's a little different scenario. In the grounds division, it's a $100 million asset maintained by 5 staff. $20 million is what each staff maintains. Similar in our transportation system, a $400 million asset maintained by 14 staff. It's $30 million is what each of those staff maintain. Just showing you how the staff are spread out and how much money of assets or the value of the asset that each person maintains. It's quite staggering. The bottom number is the fleet. We've got 180 vehicles, 4 maintainers or four mechanics. Each person is responsible for maintaining 45 different pieces of equipment and vehicles throughout town. All right, getting into the budgets now. For the public properties, this is a story that you're going to hear throughout. Is we have aging infrastructure. No surprise, it's nothing unique to Cheshire. It's common throughout the country, especially in New England here, where we got these older communities and older and aging infrastructure. It's just older and aging infrastructure requires more attention, more care, more tender loving care, and more maintenance. So that's reflecting in the overtime budgets that you'll see in the package. Our utilities, whether it be electric, gas, heat, water, those are all going up. Just like you're paying at your house, all those utilities are going up. A lot of it's due to just a contract escalation. And the bottom line is building properties going up $10,000. Again, that's just our buildings are just aging. They require more care, more maintenance. Going on to the Water Pollution Control Authority. The personnel line item there is up about $30,000. That's reflecting the budget or the staff changes out there. Part of this contract escalation also. Our materials, again, like the materials that Dave uses, the chemicals and so on, they're just going up and up and up. We're trying to keep up with inflation. Not convinced we are, but we're trying. Again, and also our just older equipment just requires more care. Program materials, trying to keep up with inflation. Electric and heating, just these things are going up just like at your house. And there's the one-time transfer. I'm sure why it should be 290. Must be a typo though, not 245, 295. Onto solid waste. Solid waste, we're proposing an increase of about $420,000. Oh, that $420,000, $300,000 is bulky waste. We've started some conversations with AJ for that. That's where the number's coming from. We've not committed to anything, but we've just started the conversation. Others, the increase are due to contract escalation. We're just building more houses. Every time we add a new house, there's another ding that we get dinged for that service. Moving on to engineering, roads, and so on. In the engineering line item, the $38,000 we funded. That's for the assistant town engineer position. Justin started back in January. We're thrilled to have him on board, and that position was funded for half of this fiscal year. So we need to fund this. That's represented. We're funding the position for 12 months instead of 6 months. Our consulting fees are down. Again, we're adding the assistant town engineer. We're looking to do more in-house design. Our consulting fees are going down. Again, trying to do more in-house work. Utility costs are going up. Inflation costs are going up. Or the cost of materials. It's just whether it be aggregate, seed, chemicals at the plant, fertilizer, you name it. You go to Home Depot, you see all these prices are going up. And I want to stop there. I guess I'll cover, not to get into the roads, but we have mill and overlays planned about 4.5 miles, chip sealing planned at about 4.5 miles, and we're looking to do crack sealing at about 10 miles. I mean, we get the biggest bang for our buck from the crack sealing. I mean, after we resurface a road or maintain a road coming in about 5 years later, that crack sealing is by far the biggest bang for our buck. Just note that the Kinetic DAS bid results are not available for all these services that we're looking for. So I really can't commit to certain roads, certain costs at this point, but that's what we're looking to do. Everybody knows we had a light year for the weather. The weather's been very favorable. We are of a $390,000 snow and ice budget. We use 62%. So we're under by about $150,000. There's different strategies we may use to replace some of our aging snow and ice materials, or to do some preventative maintenance. But, there's different things that I'll coordinate with Sean. I'm sure Sean will coordinate with the town council as to how we want to use that money or just put it back in the account. Just wanted to point out that the Water Pollution Control Authority, it's essentially a net zero. It has revenue for itself. The revenue basically covers the costs. That's what the two red boxes are showing. On the bottom, we have a fund balance of about, it's approaching $1.5 million. For me, that's what I call my rainy day fund. So for when something, we are embarking on lots of preventative maintenance programs, but if something unexpectedly goes, that's where we're going to have to go. And sure, I'll cover a lot of the wrap up. Basically, we're fighting inflation. We're trying to keep up with inflation. We're trying to increase our department efficiencies, especially with adding some of these skill sets. We will be able to do that, especially with Dave will be able, especially at the WPC where we're adding staff. Dave won't have to do as much admin work, and he can focus more on the operation of the plant and that sort of thing. And follow up to John, it was great having John go first. John said it, the parks are getting a lot more use. I think before my time, but it's everybody tells me, and I can tell you there's a lot of demand for the parks. It's in fact, so we're maintaining 5 BOE fields. In addition to the parks that we're maintaining, we're looking to do additional in-house design to save money, performing preventative maintenance like I talked about, continue to support the Bartlett Park project as John had mentioned before me. Just trying to keep up with replacing our aging equipment and aging vehicles. Essentially, the bottom line is, a young fleet, a well-maintained fleet will cost less to operate. So in the big picture, it's in our best interest. Looking to purchase a pipe camera so we can start the inspections of our pipes. Like early on, I pointed out, we have 120 miles of sewer pipe, another 100+ miles of a drain pipe throughout town. We really don't know what the condition of that equipment is. It's just the pipe camera is going to be key to assessing the condition and planning for the maintenance of that asset. We're looking to do a succession planning at the WPCA and throughout all of our departments, but particularly at the WPCA that has a seasoned and aging staff there. Looking to reduce our reliance on in-house vendors. We're always talking about how we can share equipment and share staff and share skill sets, that sort of thing. Trying to be prepared for for any emergency that pops up. And I do have to do a little foreshadowing and forecasting here, but as we increase the size of Bartlett Park, we're likely going to need one more additional parking and ground maintainer. With that, I'll take any questions.
All right. If we can go back to seeing everybody so I can see who wants to start with questions. As I scroll through on the right. Oh, there we go. All right. Who has questions? Thank you very much, Gary. That was very good presentation. Good way to get the material different than the. Well, I've got a couple of questions. I know of your $500,000 increase overall, 60% of it is the one-time item of the bulky waste. So just to begin a discussion, I'm not sure that properly belongs here this way. We have to talk about that because if it's not something we do every year, the ups and downs of the budgeting, I think that's something that we may want to talk about as we move along in the budget process. I do want to see us do it. I think for the taxes we pay in this community, a $110 million budget, it shouldn't be hard to find $250,000 or so to be able to have a bulky waste pickup every couple of years. It doesn't get used as much. The cost isn't as high, but I think this is something that we should consider, but I'm not so sure that it belongs this way being budgeted. So don't have an answer right now, but just a thought.
If I could just add one quick point, just last night I received a follow-up. We're not under a contract for bulky waste, as everyone recalls. So we did have a quote from AJ last night. Coincidentally, I received an email from Bonnie Wallinger that their disposal costs have increased recently. And so the quote we received was initially $162,750 plus $110 a ton for disposal. Last night, the email I received asked that their quote would need to be revised to $115. So it's a $5 increase in the tonnage rate. I think 300,000 is probably still a good number. Again, as Gary and I have looked at the history, and again, the council and Don Walsh and the Solid Waste Committee, the highest we had was the 1,400 tons a couple of rounds ago when we hadn't done it in a long time. We anticipate will probably be more between 800 and 1,000 tons. If you budget 1,000 tons, again, just that quick math times $115 plus the 162, you're still at about 287. So I think we're still okay with the $300,000 appropriation. But just want to give that update that I just received last night. Happy to forward that around. I haven't even forwarded it to Gary yet because I just got it. But again, I think we're okay on 300. As for where we budget operating or out of reserves, again, totally understand the point. We can have that discussion and we're open to either way.
All right. Other questions or comments, Don?
Thank you. Yeah, I agree with you, Dave, that it may not belong in the budget here. But it is something that's important, because if we wait another year, next year, it could be even higher. And, you know, we found that out when we first did it after being away from doing it over 3 years. It was pretty high. So I think maybe we could find another area to put that in there. I'd like to ask Gary one question. If take out the bulk trash, but if we had to ask you to remove one thing that you feel you could put off to next year from your budget, is there anything that you could think of that maybe I don't need this year? I understand the $148,000 that was the surplus. I'd like to upgrade some of the things that you might need, but I think we may need that this year to help offset some of this budget too. But I'm wondering if, I know you look at these budgets very carefully, and this is your first one with our town. And I must commend you. I kind of like how you did that assets per person thing, and it made it very interesting. And when you see that there's 45 vehicles per person who's taking it, who has the per mechanic, that's a lot of vehicles to be in charge of. But like, if there was one thing here that you feel maybe I could do a little bit without, is there something that you can think of?
I'm really struggling with that one, Mr. Walsh. The fact is that, you know, it's like, and I'm sort of glad I'm going after police and fire too. It's like, you know, in public works, we say it's like, you know, if the first thing you call is, you know, police and fire, second person you call is public works. Yeah,
right.
We're and I tell the guys out at the garages and at the plant, it's like, you know, we are plan A, we're plan B, we're plan C, and we're plan D. It's like we are the fallback guys. I mean, the demand for the parks is through the roof, just like John said. I mean, we're really trying to maintain, you know, the high quality of play fields and surfaces that we have out there. Our assets are just aging, you know. But I can answer that. I was sort of anticipating the other question, Don, unfortunately.
Well, you may get that question in a few more weeks anyway, so you may have to look a little closer, but I totally get it. I mean, every person who's come to us, they really have valid reasons why the increases are there. But us as a council, we have to manage this budget somehow, and we have to figure out, you know, how can we do it within reason. And there may be some cuts that we're going to have to make somewhere that, you know, we're going to ask each department to try to figure out how they can get through with whatever cuts we come up with. You know, but I appreciate your hard work at this. And it's nothing personal against any of these people. It's just our job is to try to figure out how do we lower it from a 1.77 mill rate. You know, and we have to do that somehow. Unless you want to talk to Jeff Sullivan and say, we'll take it all off his end and then be able to Jeff. But I'm not doing that.
It's just our roads and sidewalks. I mean, they're in good condition, but there's no end. There is just no end, you know, to, you know, the slips, trips and falls on the sidewalks. And there's no way you can keep up with it.
No, I get it. I appreciate that. And I'm the first one telling you, we need those sidewalks done along Route 10. I know that, yes.
Yeah.
So,
Exactly.
Thank you. Sylvia. Oh, you're on mute. There you go.
I want to thank Gary because he recently came to the library board to just inform them about the work of Public Works and presented to us a very similar presentation that he did tonight. And I thought it was very eye-opening. And I think that's something that we could use in a way to inform the public exactly how much each portion of the budget comes out of their taxes. And in Public Works and Water Pollution Control serves pretty much every single resident in this town. It's not just the pool goers or just the library goers or just the art place people or just the park people. Public Works serves every single one of us. And it is the thing that we notice the most if we can't get out when it snows, or if there's a hole in the road in front of our house, or any of the other issues. So I appreciate your breaking down all of the costs and all of the things into a more understandable format for just regular folks like me who don't have to sit and go through this budget line by line, but say, I saw all those park maintainers out there. How come it takes so many of them? Well, now they can look at it and say, each maintainer is responsible for X number of dollars worth of assets. So I think that's a good way to present any kind of budget changes to any department. And I commend you for the presentation. I agree with Don. We have to be very careful on this budget, but there are some things that affect every single resident in town, and that's one of them. So I think we should look very carefully. I understand your hesitancy to say I can give up something. We may come and ask you to do that, but I appreciate the way that you gave us the facts so that we can look at them carefully and decide a risk reward ratio there. So I appreciate it, Gary, and thanks for the library. They were all very happy. Their suggestion to you, as I recall, was you should make this information in that simple form available to the public when they're approving certain things on the budget. So thanks.
Thank you, Sylvia. Tim.
Well, I'm very happy we have some of that very fancy equipment that helps those maintainers at the wastewater treatment plant with that $500 million asset too. That makes their work a little easier. There's that silent work that gets done by equipment that we obviously have to maintain. And that's all part of this as well. So we have to be careful with that budget analysis of all the work they're actually individually responsible for. But we're responsible for the whole picture. And we understand that, I think, completely. And going back to wastewater treatment, Gary, you were suggesting some changes, which I'm not questioning. I just, it has to do with, splitting an electrician with a mechanic. I'm not sure I understand any of that, but I guess one of my questions is, how easy is it, or how hard is it for you to get these positions filled? Because I know this seems to be an issue with just about everybody, getting the right people to fit into some of these spots you need. And how do you get an electrician who wants to work half-time? I guess that was one of my questions. Is it a practical solution? Is it something you think can really happen?
If I could just, oh, sorry, didn't mean to stop any there, Tim, but
No,
if I
that's
could just
fine.
jump in before Gary answers, because it's a great point and one I was going to make, but I held off during the presentation so we could all see. The reason Gary had that slide up, again, based on a more recently announced retirement, what is in the budget, as he showed kind of with that redlined example, what was presented to me in the budget, which I approved with slight modification to move on, although approved the staffing as it was presented. The newer plan only came about a week before I had to finalize the budget and advance it. I support the newer plan, which actually comes with a slight cost savings of about $2,000 or $3,000 over what you have in the budget, which I know that will be probably one of the first questions. But the second component addresses exactly what you said, which is partly recruitment, which is why this operator and training idea that either Gary or Dave could speak to, is part of trying to bring people in and giving them a little bit of time to get their class 1, 2, 3 in advance within the town, because it is hard to find people. These are very in-demand positions, as is no secret. And then to that same point, we currently have a 30-hour electrician who, if he were to leave or advance into a different position, that is a hard one to fill. This creates a combined 40-hour, 30 mechanic electrician. So that is a easier position. We have someone in-house who we think can do it, but if we had to replace that position down the line, if they were to leave, to your point, that's also a more traditional position versus finding that part-time electrician that you identified. And I know we in the council have had this conversation a couple of years back when we tried to grapple with the electrician position and what to do. So I don't know, Gary or Dave, do you want to just speak to kind of some of the advantages operationally of the new staffing proposal you have before them tonight?
Sure. And thanks, Tim, for the question. I was flying through the slides, as you could tell, and it's great dialogue here. I'm going to let Dave chime in if you want to step up, Dave.
How you doing? For those of you who don't know me, my name is David Milano. I'm the assistant superintendent at the treatment plant for the last year. The idea here is that we have an employee who is an electrician. He's part-time, but his mechanical skills, really, we don't get to utilize them as much with him being labeled as an electrician per the union contract. But he really, he could take apart pumps. He could really do more mechanical work for us. So our idea was to create a position that's a mechanic that the E1 would just be a requirement for that position. And then in his old position, the part-time electrician, we were going to pay it as a PW2 at full-time to get an operator in training position, because the town, I used to work for the town of Southington for 7 years, and I worked for the city of Bristol for 3 years. The whole reason I got into this field was an operator in training position. The city of Bristol hired me with very little experience, no licenses, and it's kind of the way the field's going because there are such a small group of younger guys who want to get into the field. So I think it would benefit the town of Cheshire to open that entry-level position at a lower rate of pay and utilize our E1 as a mechanic, so we could fix more in-house opposed to having to send a lot of equipment out to subcontractors. I think it would save the town a lot of money in that aspect. And with the retirements coming up, the operator who's retiring, who's been there for about 22 years, he was really the mechanical backbone of the plant. And Greg, our electrician, absorbed a lot of his knowledge over the last 5 to 6 years. And he's been doing a lot more mechanical work. And he told me he was interested in becoming full-time, and it'd be great to retain him in the future to do that.
So in a sense, you really have to change some job descriptions and also be able to coordinate all this within the role the union plays or the parts these. Yeah. Okay. Well, that makes perfect sense. And I think that sort of training program sort of concept, it just makes sense probably in a lot of areas as we go down the line. Well, thank you for that explanation. I appreciate it a lot.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, Mr. Malone.
Yeah, I had just a couple of, thanks, Gary. Excellent presentation. I agree with the others. It's well done. I had a couple of quick questions. So we've added additional staff with the assistant a town engineer, but it looks like we're trying to reduce our dependency on consultants. On line 5401, we had a request for 15,000 for GIS layers and another 15 for consultants. That's completely out, as I understand it. Then we're not doing any improvement to the GIS system, and we have no budget for consultants at all. Is that correct, based on Sean's recommendation, or did I misread that, Sean?
That's correct. I again, these are tough decisions. They're all they're worthy requests, but I felt the additions to the GIS layers weren't absolutely mission critical. And again, it was relatively new in at least my understanding of the need. So I wasn't recommending funding that. Certainly the council could change it. But yes, I mean, as we've expanded upon having Justin on board now and kind of back to a full engineering staffing, the expectation is that we wouldn't be using some of those funds going forward. You'll look back in 2022, we didn't use any of the funds in that line, but I will say that was part of the reason I made the cut. subsequently, as I look back through, it does look like part of that might have been a timing, as sometimes can happen where a invoice isn't paid off in the right year. So it wasn't that we didn't have any services that year. It might have been double dipped in a different year. So I would caution, it's not like there's nothing at all needed there. If we did see fit to restore a little bit of funding there, it might be a little short budgeted. But again, with respect to those two new asks, I wasn't able to fund them, at least my recommended budget where it was shaping up.
Okay, now, and I appreciate that. I think that's probably prudent. So if I read this, if I understand it, I might be oversimplifying it, Gary. We have about $460,000 in an increase in non-personnel expenses, and they're really generally in the highways and sidewalks and drainage other category, and in the solid waste other categories. We have breakdowns there. So we have water main service and street lights, et cetera. But that category under highways is up $38,800. What is that for? I mean, I can't tell from looking at that what's increased from before. All I see is it went from 831 to 910. Could you actually describe it? Is any of that additional expense, negotiable? Let's put it that way. I know that, like Don had said, we're looking for anything. So I can't tell where that $38,800 is in. And whether
I can probably answer that for you, John. The largest point of it is, and this happens from year to year, I don't have the percent in front of me, but the RWA water service charge, which is for having our water availability for our system, it's on a per linear inch fee rate. I think that their rate is up. Is it 6.5? Is it 6%, Gary? Or was it 5%? David would know. Sorry. 5%. It's on that 833 large number there.
That's the whole. So we can blame David Bowery. So
I didn't say
actually Tim Slocum. He had to approve it.
I said none of those things. Let the record show.
But I requested it, and I proudly did. So I will admit that.
Yeah. Okay, but, yes, that's on the 833. That was 5% lower last year.
That can't be changed. And then the 420,000 that's in the contractual services other for solid waste. I know the 300's pretty clear. Are the others just because we have increased people in town, increased homes and things, or is there anything specific there that would make up the 120 additional thousand that's more than anything else in that listing there?
Part of it's going to be the annual increase in the AJ contract for residential curbside collection. Gary might have that number in front of us, otherwise we can send it around. But yeah, as you said, 300,000. A bulk of that additional will be from the contract. And then, as Gary was saying, we have some new house assumptions and not even assumptions, new houses that came on in the last year that we know we have to budget for next year. But in terms of a breakdown, we could either get that for you later, or Gary, do you have more info on that at your fingertips by any chance?
I don't have it at my fingertips. I'd have to dive into it with Anne Marie.
Sure.
Okay. It's just a lot of items there, and I'm just not sure if anyone is making up for the bulk of that, or it's just a little bit on each of those categories, and then, okay.
Yeah, it's really more a few categories, because I don't think Has Waste it isn't increased. I don't think the RWA Has Waste program, or if it is, it's a modest increase. But there are a few. We can get a breakdown year over year of each of those items and just show you where the increases are.
I'd be curious. It may not be manageable, beyond what you presented here, but it'd be interesting to see it. So.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah, we can compare it to last year's budget. They're broken out a similar way. Yep.
That's all I have, David. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Other questions or comments from council members on the
Just
yes,
one
Tim.
question. Gary, on the salt stuff, the unused, snow stuff for the year, that I guess that holds over pretty well. I mean, you don't have to put salt on top of the salt to make it stay salt. It'll be okay. Is that how that works? What we have in the sheds?
Yes, we throw the salt in a protected salt shed. So it's out of the elements, and yes, it will carry over to next year.
Right. And I was wondering if what's in the salt shed, what is that 10% of what's left in the budget? I mean, what does that really represent in what wasn't expended? Labor, I assume?
It's across the board. Where did I see that number recently?
There's got to be labor in there, or am I mistaken? That's strictly in.
It's strictly like the overtime number. I looked
Fine.
at it and I don't, but
So it's not so much the supply side or what goes into making the road safe to drive on. Most of this is what wasn't expended on overtime.
it's a combination of both labor and materials, Tim.
Okay, so at some point, let me see what that is, just a little simply, because maybe that gives us a more realistic way to understand where we can redistribute those savings in the budget.
It's in the front of my door. I'm pretty sure that's where that packet is. You want to grab it, Dave?
You don't have to give me the answer now. That's fine. That's what follow-ups are for.
Yeah, right there. You got your hand on, Dave. I can give you the breakout, Tim. Thank you. I knew I saw it this morning. The overtime line, we've used 60% of the overtime line. And program materials, we've used 68%. So is that kind of breakout that you were looking for?
Yeah, but the number is what we'll ultimately need to know, because that's what we would plug into to the total to really net out where we can apply those savings realistically across the board.
There's about 7 different line categories here. The total, we have about 148,000 of unused money.
Right.
43,000.
So 60% of that is roughly $70,000.
What's that?
So if 60% of that is labor, of the 148 unused.
Oh, about 60% was labor. It was 60% unused total of that labor line. So there's like $43,000 in labor and another looks like $50,000 in program materials, which would be the salt. So those items add up to almost 100,000.
Okay, so actually less of it is labor than I would have thought. Okay. Well, thank you for that elucidation.
Okay, anytime.
All right. Any other questions? Yes, David.
This is just an observation, nothing, I mean, not really for the budget. First, thanks for the presentation. I think this was very good, very helpful, and very informative to see not only, where we are, where we need to go, and things for us to start thinking about, but the picture that you had put up, one of the pictures you had put up earlier, at the end of your presentation was the picture of the snowplow outside the Park and Rec, the Public Works garage there. And that snowplow looked great and the decal looked great. But I happened to be driving to Costco the other day and I saw the plow out there, and the town decal, at least as I passed by, didn't look like it's in such good repair on the plow that's sitting outside the Public Works garage. And I just wanted to see if maybe you might want to take a look at that. I don't know if it's a decal and it's peeling off or just the paint's all gone, but it doesn't look all that fresh out there. So I just want to point that out.
Thanks for the note, David.
All right. Other questions or comments on operating budget? All right, guys, we're at 8 o'clock. I don't mind staying a little longer if we want to try to do capital budget. For these
Usually
guys,
a big
it's big
capital
dollars,
budget.
but what's that? It is. It's big
Yeah,
dollars,
I'd
but it's not a
rather
lot
be
of
more
items.
Focused.
Okay, so we can potentially bring that back next Thursday then, because that's kind of a night where we do have other things going on, and we'll do finance that night as well, if that's all right.
Yeah.
Okay, all right. So then we will go, we'll keep on with the schedule for next Tuesday is education. And then just to themselves for the night. And then Thursday is a proposed public information session. And then we'll get into the finance and the capital portion of Public Works and WPCD, and then do public property too. Okay.
And there's a few other capital, if you don't mind, a few other capital that night, like in IT
Yes.
and others, if you don't mind,
Yep.
maybe a general capital review of all the missing pieces that we haven't.
Yeah.
I had another question, if I may, David.
Yes.
And it had to do with some conversations that have taken place regarding, a sidewalk survey and things of those natures, and some conversations that have taken place, among them recommending that we have sort of a review of our sidewalks in town. And just as we did with the pavement program, I am sure that this budget didn't contemplate any of that. And I think that's fair and reasonable. But if it is also fair and reasonable, could we have, when you give your capital presentation next time, whenever it's prescribed, an estimate of what that might cost? If it's possible. If it's too soon, I understand we can wait. The budget isn't being resolved in 15 minutes after your report. So, but I think it
Yeah,
is
we'll take a look at
part of the
that.
larger conversation we've been having elsewhere. And if we could have that included.
Sure. Yeah, we'll have discussions and see if we can get some pricing information.
Okay.
All right, then I will hand it back to you, Mr. Chairman, for adjournment.
Oh, that's right. I always forget. I got the hard part.
Well, I forgot last week and forgot to give it to Don when he was filling in. I felt
Well,
bad.
I'm
Okay, it
gonna,
wasn't recorded anyway.
I'm gonna
Okay.
thank everybody, staff wise, for your participation. A pleasure to meet you all again, and everybody else on the council as well. And I will ask next for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second? All in favor?
Aye.
Good night.